Chronicles first. It's actually first and second Chronicles. I lumped them together because they seem to be one story. That actually, I think it was all one story. It was meant to be one, but the original scroll, was too long, so they broke it in two, and then they wrote it like that in the Bible. I think it was the same thing with Kings. So for the first like 9 or 10 chapters of Chronicles, it's a chronicle order of the from Adam to Noah's son. Um, it seems to be focused on all the stories of the Bible, every name in order, and I think that's to point out the descendants from the last chapter or the last couple chapters or couple books where the covenant is that a descendant from David is gonna come and reign over Jerusalem and build the temple or rebuild the temple. So there's a lot of focus on David through these books. It's and then they have the descendants of the priesthood, and there's a lot of that. I tried not to get too bored with that, but it's good historical upkeep. It does mention that there is some stories on some other books that, when I have researched them, they were never saved, even though it said this story of David and this and this and this was kept in that. So I wrote David's stories. It seems like it's really a summary of the last couple books, except that a, a lot of the negatives from the stories of David have been kept out. I don't know if it's to put David on highlighting David's achievement and power and mightiness and his wins. See, I wrote the good stories of David. The negatives aren't really mentioned. The moving of the ark, and still, I highlighted this one because I find that very interesting. When the oxen stumbled and the the Lord anger was aroused against Uzzah, and he struck him dead because he had laid his hand on the ark. There was something about not looking in the ark or not touching, not going in the ark or whatnot. So a whole preparation, very details. It shows one thing it does go into here that it doesn't go into the previous books is the detail that David goes into building the temple, moving the ark, the way that he organized leaders and priests and whatnot, by the numbers in order to do things right. He gets instructions from God, very specifics. Reminds me of the whole tabernacle in the past. Moses, I think it was. His prayer on being grateful, which I appreciated that. I do see one there's later that I didn't appreciate as much. But David's prayer of thanks, that really impressed me in the previous. But this is just summarizing the last few books, really, I think. David's military victories and defeat, capturing Rabbah, taking census, preparations of the temple, duties of the priest, descendants, musicians, gatekeepers. There's a few details that weren't a little Guinness, non-alcoholic. It's like chocolate water. Some details about his leadership, military commanders and divisions, and how many troops there were, leaders of the tribe. David's instructions to Solomon, gifts for building the temple, and one thing David's prayer of praise, one thing, and then Solomon named king that I see here. All the highlights of the kings and the reigns is based on Judah. It's not the northern kingdom kings are not really mentioned or not mentioned much, and I think that's because it's focusing on the lineage of David. Solomon in Second Chronicles, Solomon asked for wisdom, and these are the all-knowing God. I believe there's only one God, and this is the God that they're speaking to. And it says, God said to Solomon, because your greatest desire is to help the people, and you did not ask for wealth, riches, fame, or even death to your enemies or long life, but rather you asked for wisdom and knowledge to properly govern my people. I will certainly give you the wisdom and the knowledge you requested, but I will also give you wealth and riches. But, you say that like because you didn't ask or because you asked for wisdom. But if you already know everything that he's going to do and that he's basically going to doom Israel to a certain extent, as wise and as great and as amazing as he is in many other extents, I don't get that. I mean, right there, it shows one of the things that I believe David didn't want to do because he didn't want no part of Egypt, didn't want no treaty, and it's right after, as soon as he gets rain, according to this. I know that didn't come till later, but it says Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt. So, I mean, that starts. And then the preparation from the temple, the letter to Solomon, the reply from King Hiram, Solomon building the temple, furnishing the temple, all the details of the temple, the ark, Solomon's prayer. This one is the one that I'm a little funky about. Solomon's prayer of dedication. So I feel like he's got a bit of audacity when he's talking to God. And he's like, but will God really live on earth among people? He's talking about the covenant that he's given. And like, nevertheless, listen to my prayer and plea, oh Lord. He's not asking, he's telling. And there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. There's a lot of ifs. If someone wrongs another person, then hear from heaven and judge between your servant. If your people Israel are defeated by the enemy, then hear from heaven and forgive their sins. If the skies are shut, if there is a famine, then hear from heaven. If your people go out where you send them to fight the enemy, then hear their prayers. If they turn to you, then hear their prayers. Oh God, may your eyes be open and your ears attentive to all the prayers made to you in this place. It's like he's telling God, hey, if this happens, please listen to this. If this, not even please, listen. If this happened, do this. If this happened, do that. If this happened, listen to your people. If this happened, listen to them. That to me was a bit arrogant. And then maybe I missed this, or maybe I ran through it on the last one, but I highlighted where he put, when he was dedicating the temple. I didn't realize, or maybe I just missed that piece, that he sacrificed 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goat in dedication. It's a lot. And for the next 7 days, because I like that, there's a lot about 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. Lord responds to Solomon, I heard your prayers, when I speak as the fact, it would be done, so yeah, this his response. I didn't highlight the whole response from God. He says, and my eyes will be open and I will listen and this and that. But he also says, but, God puts this huge but there on chapter 7 of 2nd Chronicles, verse 19 through the end of it, through 22. But if you and your descendants abandon me, disobey, decree that the commands I have given you, and you serve to worship other gods, then I will uproot the people, blah, 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 blah. That is why he has brought all these disasters to them when somebody asks. So this is going to happen. You as the God, the only God. If this was an angel, if this was a different God, if this was somebody he thought was God, I could understand all that. But the one and only God, the Alpha and the Omega, the one where there's no time and space being held from him, and he makes himself seen to him, which is another thing that, in other places it says that he can't be seen, so I have some questions there. And it continues to, now Solomon's many achievements and the visit from Queen Sheba and the fact that she gave him 9,000 pounds of gold. Like, what is that? 9,000 pounds. It's 4.5 tons. Like, that's a lot. And that's not including all the other stuff that they gave him. And then again, it goes through, Solomon's reign and the tribes revolt and the prophecies and Egypt invading Judah, and he goes through all these kings and reigns of Judah. It's focusing on the south of Israel, not the northern Israel. Then it goes through Joash and Josiah. And it just seems, I even put here history lessons on good kings and kings that didn't please God. That's what it seems like. It's doing a summary, not so much a historical events like the other books were doing, the last few books, but this one is doing kind of like a history lesson. These are all the great kings. These are the kings that they great, and then these are the kings that did not obey the Torah, did not obey the rules of Moses, did not obey God, did not please God. Then Joash, of course, I highlight the 7 years, because he was 7 years old when he became king. And it talks about him repairing the temple and some more rulers, and Uzziah, Jotham, preparation for Passover. Oh Lord, I return to the Lord. And the king pass out these little papers, kind of like flyers, telling people, to return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, so that he will return the few of us who have survived the conquest of the Assyrian kings. Do not be like your ancestors, relatives who abandoned the Lord, the God of your ancestors, and became an object of derision. So that's Hezekiah's religious reform. I believe that was the seer or the priest that helped out. The threats to Jerusalem, the sickness, Josiah's ruined Judah, Ammon. And then again, this is like a summary of his priests discovering the God of the law and the law of God, the law of Moses, when he in the temple. Josiah celebrates. This is when he did the religious reform. He celebrates the Passover again, and he gets with people. This is when he really got with the people. Then and he dies, and where his sons rule. Just it shortens all these historical events, but it's not so much historical events as it's more history lessons. And in a very, very condensed piece, it shows how, the story of Babylon, killing all these Judas, young men, even chasing them into the temple. They had no pity, killing young men and young women, old and infirm. Destroying the temple, destroying the walls. And then it shows how the Lord stirred up the heart of Cyrus, and how he tells them, you're in exile, go back, and where it's basically fulfilling the prophecy and telling the Israelites to go back and rebuild the temple and get that dynasty back in there. And next is Ezra. Not even Ezra was a book. I don't feel like a very good Christian sometimes. I feel like I don't know a lot of this. A lot of the main stories I remember, but just word by word, story by story, death by death, promise by promise, I've missed a lot. So that's 13, 14 books down. 14 books down. And it's the 19th. I can't believe that I'm moving this fast, but that was First Chronicles and Second Chronicles. Ezra coming up.